Adam?
Thank you, Al. Lonely, Al's Mr. Lonely. He's got nobody. He's on his own. Except for MJ. Please welcome MJ. She's on our show. Al, take it away.
Oh, man. That's a beautiful serenade.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
So, I want to introduce MJ. First of all, thank you for being here with us today. MJ is an artist passionate about conscious relationships. She's hosted and facilitated over 100 events around conscious dating and relationships. She recently published a conversation playbook called Get to Know Me to help people connect in a more meaningful way. She's currently in the preliminary stages of co-creating and co-hosting a new podcast on deep, meaningful topics.
Welcome, MJ.
Thank you.
That's impressive.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So we have you here today. I want to talk about how to sit in your loneliness, especially when no one tells you how to do that.
No one.
Yeah. And so here is my question.
Uh-uh.
What the fuck does it mean to sit in your loneliness?
Al said fuck. What does it mean to sit in your loneliness? I want to go to the quote that we used. It's my favorite quote from
Okay.
Bruce Springsteen, from the song Hungry Heart.
Yeah.
Everybody needs a place to rest. Everybody wants to have a home. Don't make no difference what nobody says. Ain't nobody like to be alone. How does that hit you when you hear it? Or does it hit you?
At this very moment, not hitting me at this very moment.
No, it doesn't
No,
hit you
I
at
mean,
all?
I know. I mean,
I-
the song resonates. I mean, different songs with
When
for
you're
me
listening
hit at
to it,
different
though,
times,
I
but,
remember.
oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I remember a kid. Do you have a feeling about this, MJ?
It used to affect me,
Mhm.
but after living the being alone,
Yeah.
not as much.
Yeah, it's like in his song, he's basically saying it's like he'll do anything not to have to be alone,
Yeah.
right? It's about marriage, leaving his wife, all that, if I recall correctly. But, I agree. What the fuck does it mean to sit in your loneliness? And who shows you how to do that?
And is it a bad thing to sit in your loneliness?
I don't think so. I just wouldn't know where to start. Where do you start? Anyone?
I think you have to realize, because at least for me, I had a fear of being lonely, being alone, and then you go through life events where you're just going to have to be alone. And I realized after a while that I would find things to make sure that I'm not lonely,
Mhm.
like a lot of distraction. And the more I kind of worked on myself, the more I realized I'm like, wait a minute, like you're
But-
avoiding.
But all healthy distractions.
No, they're
No?
not. For me, if it's a distraction, you're avoiding yourself,
Okay.
essentially. So
Well, but
Right.
yeah. But there's healthy and there's
I was gonna
unhealthy
say,
distractions.
are there levels of distraction? So, for example, okay, so when I think loneliness, I often think in terms of loss,
Mhm.
whether that's
Losing a spouse.
losing a spouse.
Okay.
I mean, nothing could be more traumatic than that,
Mhm.
or a relationship ending. And there's different ways to lose yourself
Mhm.
in the grieving process, right? Some people might be, okay, I'm going to fill up my time one event after another. I'm just going to keep going,
You could
keep my
always
mind
find
busy.
someone to fill your time, yes.
Right?
Well, not always.
But
So shut-ins,
whether,
but yeah.
whether it's people to fill your time, events to fill your time, things to do your time, right? It's an escape.
Okay.
I understand that it's maybe not the healthiest, but it's not, I'm going to drink my sorrows away. I'm going to, right? I'm not, now I'm smoking up, 22 times a day, where it's a whole other level of escapism. And I'm not criticizing anyone because, again, until someone's in that situation, and we've all been, everyone's been in that situation where every relationship ends one way or another, and where people have experienced
But you
heartbreak.
just hit on kind of talking on the surface of addictions. Are people in addiction?
yes, they can be.
They can be.
Yeah.
Sure. That's why I'm saying, like, is if it's an escape, it's one thing if you're enjoying the company of something or you're enjoying an event or whatever type thing. But if you're doing it to escape, I think that's when it becomes unhealthy, no matter
Yeah.
what it is.
Yeah. Are you trying not to, like, because I remember, we always talk about narcissists, but it's one of the things that when they say about narcissists, they always need to be surrounding themselves with people or
Mhm.
things or challenges or crises because they can never sit with themselves. if they ever have to do it, it's like almost like their world will implode. So are other people like that too, is the question? Or, are there different levels of people that sometimes they really need people and other times they can be on their own? Extrovert, introvert, for example. Yeah.
That's a big one.
Where you are in your place of growth
Mm-hmm.
and your
Totally.
sense of understanding and self-awareness.
But what's being alone? So if you're sitting in your house by now, but here as an
Yeah.
example. So for me, I'm really busy all the time, right? Whether I'm busy with work, got a podcast going. I have a second job that I do. I have kids. They're not here right now, but they will be home tomorrow. But what I'm saying is, even during the day, and I work at home alone, you'd think, people like call me and like, like you must be lonely, you're home alone. But that's the whole thing. People are constantly calling me. I have friends calling me. My mother's calling me. I have people texting me. I have people from work, right? Because now you're not in meetings. They're always calling. So
Yeah.
it never stops. I could be home all day and never be alone once. But is there value, we're saying, in actually taking time to be alone and learning how to spend that time by yourself and not be surrounded by all these people? Unless there's value in, knowing that people like you, but is it seeking validation or you're just getting validation one way or another? But at the same time, it's like you're being filled up all the time. But is that taking too much away from you so you're not getting in touch with who you are yourself and you're losing that? That's my challenge. Go.
I think it depends on, first of all, if you're an introvert or an extrovert.
Mhm.
It's going to be easier, I think, for introverts to be alone because you re-energize yourself
Mhm.
when there's no people around and you can actually hear your thoughts. I think a lot of people, I'm an introvert, social introvert, you need time to think for yourself,
Mhm.
to know what you want, as opposed, especially if you're always the giver. You give a lot of energy. You don't know what you need. So you
Yeah.
need time alone to be able to do that.
Yeah.
But even as an introvert, you can do it in a healthy way where it's okay to spend time where there's nothing around but
Yeah.
you and your thought, journaling, whatever. Like you're really spending time with your quality time with yourself.
For an introvert, yeah, much easier to like pull back. Artist,
Yeah.
right?
We can appreciate that solitude at times because we're in
You can
that-
focus on the
that
project for
creative-
3 days and forget that the other people exist.
Well,
Yeah.
it's, I'm sitting there working on a canvas and it's like the music is playing, I'm inspired. Next thing you know, it's like, oh man.
The whole day's gone.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
you just lose track of
I
time.
could write that way too for hours upon hours. And
absolutely.
not, if no one called me, it's like, that's great. I've just been living in my own world.
I think context is important.
Mhm.
And so for me, and I understand we're talking loneliness generally, but I want to talk loneliness as it pertains to the end of a relationship right now. Okay?
Mhm. Okay.
And that's where I think it's not uncommon. I've been guilty of it myself, where people struggle, where a relationship ends
Mhm.
and you're hurt, you're feeling sorry for yourself, so on and so forth. And you're trying to find that band-aid fix. And so rather than sitting in that discomfort, sitting in some of that chaos,
Mhm.
it's
Isn't that the perfect time to kind of find yourself though?
absolutely
Right? Like for personal growth, if you've been in a relationship, and here's the thing, and we'll talk about this in other episodes, but most of the time what we're talking about in other episodes are toxic things that people do
yeah.
to avoid this very thing of having to sit in their loneliness and have to figure themselves out, take back your own energy. But what are all these things that other people are taking away from you that you've gotten so used to that when you have the opportunity, you don't want to give it up. You miss it now, but it's become so entrenched in your life that you are so unfamiliar with yourself that you don't know how to get yourself back. So how do you get yourself back there instead of saying, I want to get my ex back, another episode we did, or, I need to surround myself with people because I need support. And but yeah, you're always getting support from people and you're going to annoy them too, just by saying the same thing over and over again, because you really do have to sit in it yourself. How do you get to that point where look, I'm going to take a time out here for myself and just sit in this for a bit and figure me out for now?
I was going to say the one thing I wanted to add that as well, even before figuring yourself out, if you're looking at distractions and everything else, you're almost avoiding the grieving process.
Mm-hmm.
And that is really unhealthy as well. Because
What are
the only
stages
way
of
to
the
move
grieving
forward.
process? I always like to put you on the spot.
You know what? It actually, I don't remember them in order, but here's the other thing. It
Yeah.
depends because depending on what model you look at, there's 5
different ones.
or there's 7 or there's not.
Yeah.
So, and the other thing is like anything else is not linear. It's not like you go step 1, step 2, step 3, and then it's, you hit the highest
No,
level.
you can go back and forth.
Back and forth and
Yeah.
everything else, right? But that's where, as I say, the loneliness also allows for that grieving and the healing, along with that sense of self-discovery, that sense of getting back in tune with yourself, being able to grow from that
Okay,
and
but
take away.
before we get into this, let's go around the table and we'll start with MJ. We're going to put her on the spot. You don't have to be 100% honest, although,
I don't know.
what's the loneliest you've ever felt?
After my divorce,
Yeah.
for sure, because I was in a relationship for 18 years.
Mhm.
So it's a long time to kind of like change the way you do everything. And then all of a sudden you go from always having somebody somehow,
Mhm.
even towards the end of a relationship, even though it wasn't like the beginning, but there's always somebody there,
Yeah.
to have nobody.
Yeah.
And then kind of realizing through the process, like I'm going to go grocery shopping. Oh, yes, I'm buying for one person.
Mhm.
I'm cooking. Oh, yes, I'm going for one person.
It's like a
I'm coming
reset.
back.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I'm coming back from an event. Oh, nobody's calling me to make sure that I got home safe. All these little things.
Little things you get used to too. Yeah.
Absolutely. So yeah,
Okay.
that was definitely.
Yeah. No, I've lived that, so I get it. Al?
For me, as both you know, I've never been married, but in terms of with my ex, where my
We'll
family,
say that's neither good nor bad. So,
right? But with my ex, where I honestly thought we were going to spend the rest of our lives together. She had a daughter as well, a little one who I was really attached to. And so for me, it was like, okay, this is the family that I never had because I always wanted kids when I was younger. And so it was almost a double whammy for me where it was the ex ended things and it was like, and someone who I saw as my own daughter as well. It wasn't even like her child. It was like, no, this is our child. And so for me, it was a double whammy. And that was the loneliest for me, or my low point. And don't get me wrong, I had great support in terms of friends and family,
Yeah.
but man, that heartache.
you're in your head so much too. It's like there's only so much they can do to distract you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my turn?
Yeah.
Oh, joy. It's a similar feeling. It's happened to me a couple times because, we'll go back to this whole idea of chaos and how many times
Yeah.
I've burned things down. But there was one time when I was younger, probably late 20s, I was dating someone and her mother wouldn't, I lived with her, but her mother was there at the time. She wouldn't let me back in to take any of my stuff. So I ended up moving in a place with like nothing. So
Wow.
you start off with the mattress on the floor, your TV, your laptop. So that's
Yeah.
a lonely feeling at first. I think I had dinner the first night with my landlord. He was a cool guy. But another time too, and I will say during divorce, but the lonely feeling is, we did nesting. So
Okay.
we both would leave the house into this like dingy basement apartment again. You didn't want to spend a lot of money. You didn't know how long you're going to be there. So it's like you throw a mattress on the floor, you have a couch, you have a TV. Like you're not used to the kitchen. It was in a basement. We've been living in our own house.
Yeah.
But it's the same feeling, but it's the sparseness of that. And that's, like in there, I don't have access to my kids. I do, but it's like
It's
you're
different.
staying
It's
back,
different. Yeah.
no pets, no goldfish, even no pictures on the walls to remind you of anything. So it's an interesting feeling when you go through that. Although I will say it's probably one of the best experiences you go through because you're sitting there with your thoughts. And I will tell you, a lot of the psychology stuff I know today was getting books and just sitting in those situations and reading books and getting to know myself better, which I found helpful.
Okay. So you said reading helps you.
Mhm.
I want to go around then in
Yeah,
terms of
okay.
questions. So I want to start with, was there
We're
anything
gonna
else?
go to the list
Yeah.
after,
I was
but
gonna say,
yeah.
was there anything else that helped you? And then MG, I'm curious, and then I'll answer that.
Uh, Out of the loneliness,
Yeah. So you said reading helped a
I
lot.
hate to say dating, but
Gotta be honest.
I've learned my lesson since. But because that's not fair to other people when you're using that as kind of a crutch to
Yeah.
get through that when you're not ready for it. So there was that. Alcohol or drugs, I wouldn't say that, but everyone has their own vices. Again, dating. But podcasts certainly help. Music, always music. That's why there's always I always like to kind of sneak a quote into all of these
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
music is certainly it's the one thing that certainly helps me. What about you?
Well, a lot of things. Netflix helped.
Oh,
That was one.
funny enough, I can't watch TV when I'm
Yeah.
going through that, but that's cool. Yeah.
Romantic.
There you go.
He's kind of like to still believe in love and things like
Okay.
that and escape from there. Journaling a lot,
Writing's a
reading
good one. Yeah.
podcasts and all these type of thing. A lot of journaling. Journaling is big
Yeah.
for me. And I have a couple friends that was like, for me, like towards the end of my marriage, we had like meetings on a regular basis about like our life and all these type of things. That helped a lot. And even like through the divorce and like a year or two afterwards,
Yeah.
like I had some people that I could talk to
Yeah,
them.
but you were able to connect to certain people too, maybe going through the same things that you were, not sharing your journal or anything, but
I
yeah.
was the only one. That's
Oh,
the thing that's
wow.
weird to be the only one that's going through a divorce because people kind of like behave differently.
Yeah.
It's almost as if you have like a contagious disease that you're
Yeah.
getting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's that. Oh, and another thing that helped a lot, my dog, to be honest. When you
Yeah.
said like open up
Yes.
the
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
pets usually help. Yeah, for
a
sure.
lot.
That's why I said, yeah, being alone in a place without pets was weird. Yeah.
Mhm.
Let's see what else got.
It's scary. I'll get into it, but it's scary how similar you and I are.
Yeah.
Because again, for me, there were certain books. I've talked about it before, but Mark Manson,
Mm.
right? The Subtle Art.
Once the
Right.
subtle art of
it's
not giving a fuck once again. Yeah.
It's like I know I should have brought a copy just to kind of hold up and
No,
you know and share.
we'll attach this to the podcast. Yeah.
But that for me just was really impactful.
Yeah.
Podcasts. So certain podcasts on self-development, relationships, things like that. Again, music, right? Always looking for these rock songs about breaking up and things ending, connecting with that. And then for me, just talking to a professional, I found that was so helpful too.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that was huge.
No, talking to a professional always. And sometimes I don't stick it out the whole time, but in the beginning, I always go back to it.
Yeah, but I
It helps
found
with
that was really helpful as well in terms of that. So
Okay.
yeah,
Well, this got somber
I
quickly.
know.
Okay, so we have notes for today that I figured we'll try to go into it. Once again, we were talking about what the fuck does it mean to sit in your loneliness, just because I love saying it. I had a great article here from shineapp.com. It was How to Soothe Loneliness Using Solitude. It's written by Kris Gage, November 2017. The concept of this, it was talking about all the different things that we do kind of to our own detriment, that don't allow us to kind of sit in our own loneliness. So there's a bit of a list here. So first thing it says, there's a quote: "We build our personal relationships to the detriment of our own well-being to avoid the pain and discomfort of sitting with ourselves," which I think we agree with. Yeah. So we kind of covered that a bit, but yeah, it's kind of like that puts it all out there in one sentence.
Absolutely.
Okay. We worry too much about what others think too. So we spend so much energy trying to please other people, get their validation, to our own expense, right? We don't spend nearly enough time sitting in our own feelings and thoughts and questioning them or understanding anything about ourselves for some people, right? So that's a big one.
Because it goes back to vulnerability. And it's really hard to be that raw with yourself, whether it's what are the changes I need to make? What is the learning I can take from this? Just to even deal with those feelings, right? Because it's painful. It's incredibly painful. And so it's almost, I'll do anything to avoid having to feel that.
Yeah.
Do you think there's a biological reason for that?
It has to be.
Okay.
There
So
has to be.
I have that on the page, which is why I asked the question.
No, but I was going to say I would say that humans, like any other animal, it's instinctively, we want a sense of community.
It's a sense of community,
right?
okay? But there's a protective factor to that too. And so I think back to certain movies from my childhood. One of them always sticks out to me as the Highlander.
Okay.
So in that movie, because he's got special powers and they feel it, right? So I think we were talking about, people, the witch hunts back in the day. So it was a similar thing, right? So he had special powers. So his whole, in the Highlander movie, they kick him out, right?
Okay.
And so if you're being kicked out of your society back in those days into the woods, marauders, animals, right? There's a biological need to be surrounded by community, to be liked by people, and not to be in solitude. What do they call that with wolves? It's called the omega wolf. The omega wolf is always the one who's last and left out, and it's the older wolf. And it's like if something happens to that wolf, it's like they're not going to save it because it's the wolf on its way out, right?
But at the same time, there's this what's the term for it? Like the journey. There's a name for it. Because the being alone and having to go through that.
Are you talking
Like
about
the
certain
gauntlet?
there's certain cultures where it's that?
It's more like a spiritual
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
forget
yeah.
the term for it.
Yeah.
I'm thinking
Yeah.
Rumspringa for some reason, but
It's probably going to come.
that's totally different. Yeah.
And definitely not Midsummer. For anyone who's seen
There's
that.
no solitude in that.
No.
Sow your oats. No, definitely not.
But there's like even it's almost like that idea of like the hero's journey in a
Yes.
sense,
Yeah.
because you have to go at it alone, and whenever these things happen, that whole loneliness is an opportunity if you're open to it.
Yeah.
To kind of be
Just
like,
show what
okay,
you're
this
worth.
is my hero's journey. Because
Yeah.
for me, like I was afraid of being alone for the long. That was like my biggest fear.
Yeah.
And then after a
It's
while,
like
I'm
the
like,
Lion King.
I'm living that fear. And it's like after a couple of years, like, oh, I survived that
Yeah.
fear.
No,
But
no.
but MJ, I would say that's the underpinning for probably everyone, right? Is the fear of being alone. Because ultimately, regardless of what,
I kid you not. Next thing on the page,
oh really?
most people cannot stand to be alone.
Because again, instinctively, no one wants to be alone. We all want companionship, partnership. We want connection, and that's where it comes from. But it goes back to if you look at most things,
Mm-hmm.
and we talk fear.
Yeah.
What's the natural avoidance with fear
Pain.
and avoidance?
Well, pain and avoidance. Yeah.
Right? So it's the same type of thing.
Mm.
Why do you want to sit in your fear, which in this case is your loneliness?
Mhm.
The best way to tackle fear and grow.
Yeah, but procrastination is part of that too. There's so many things that people do that feed
Absolutely.
into that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, but yeah.
But the thing is, lesson from being alone is that once you have been alone and felt the loneliness, has gone through that, you have a better appreciation for being in a community and a relationship. You don't take it for granted. If you haven't experienced that, you might take it for granted.
Well,
And
because you
that's
see it differently. It's a different energy that you have. You're
100%.
not coming at it from like fear or anger or any of
Yeah.
those things. You're happy within your core of yourself and more like you're the giving person to the community. So it's more fun.
Mhm. You're not
Instead of,
attached to it either. So you're not, it's not a threat that much to you anymore. If somebody is threatening you, like, you know what, if you do this, I'm going to leave you.
oh, the manipulation of that. I
Right?
love
Right.
that. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, there's the door. Let me get it for you. Because
Yeah.
we talked about chivalry in a previous episode. So let me open that door for you.
Yeah,
There
yeah,
you go. Right.
yeah, please
Let
walk
me-
out.
exactly.
Bye-bye.
No, but
See you later.
But I was going to say, but that's where to me the healthiest relationships, or potentially the healthiest relationships, start when you're not worried about being alone anymore, where you're secure in yourself enough that if it works, it works. If it doesn't, you're not hanging on for fear, but it's a better chance to thrive. Even if the relationship starts off successful, but it started off where you came still from a place of I don't want to be alone. So you meet, right? You meet Mr. Right or Mrs. Right or whatever it happens to be, but you're coming from that
Right.
place of I
Mrs.
don't.
Right now.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Because it's you're still coming from a place of I don't want to be alone, and then this person was, oh, they're perfect for me. Are they, or is it you didn't want to be alone, and so this was the best option
No,
at
if
the
you're
time?
wounded, you're bringing toxic traits to that. They're bringing toxic traits to that,
Absolutely.
and that's not the reason to be with someone.
No.
You're just trying to fill gaps that you've refused to fill yourself.
And that's what I've learned over time. It took me, some age and wisdom to understand that, and we all kind of grow at our own pace. Well, hopefully we grow at our own pace. Some people,
It's a very hard
some
thing
some
to
some
do.
people just flatline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But hopefully we grow at our own pace. But it's powerful learning.
We don't use the term flatline. We use the word atrophy. So the next point that they made was to overcome discomfort of being alone. I think we're already talking about this. With our own experience emotions, we may sit in our feelings and breathe in acknowledgement and breathe out acceptance. In our stillness, mindfulness, controlling our thoughts, questioning the stories we tell ourselves, silencing our toxic shame and our negative thinking. We all tried this?
Yep.
Yep.
Does it work?
Yep.
I'd say yeah.
Yeah. It
I'd
takes
say it's all
time.
helped me out. It definitely takes time.
Anyone who thinks it's like a quick fix, it's like, oh, it's like, the 4-day regimen of antibiotics and you're cured. It's like, okay, think again. It takes time and it takes regular practice, I believe, with that too, because it's easy to slip back into our old patterns and the way we're hardwired. But even part of that is it's neural pathways and processing with that as well.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, MJ was sorry, you were talking about starting that journey too, right? So a lot of these things is like you don't start out watching like listening, watching, or doing it yourself like 2 hours of mindfulness. It's like 5 minutes, and then you
Yeah.
go from there. Yeah.
Right. And I find it's almost like a cycle process because it like you keep going back and repeating that pattern, but you're getting better and better at it.
Catching
all the
yourself.
time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Definitely.
It's a shorter pattern. Like
Yeah.
even your relationships can get shorter because you're even catching on sooner. The things you're attracted to maybe aren't the best for you, or the things that you do aren't the best. And those relationships can get shorter because as you're learning, I don't want to be this. I don't want to wait this out anymore. Yeah.
Well, that awareness grows. That understanding grows because you put the time in to, again, sit with that loneliness, sit with that discomfort, but it makes you more now self-aware. When you have all these other distractions, surface level, you think, oh no, I've grown, I understand. The reality is you're going to repeat the same patterns because you're going to fall back into the same mindset and the same habits.
So we're still back to the whole idea of what does it mean to sit in your loneliness? So let's talk about the difference between loneliness and solitude.
That's a good one.
There's a good quote here, and this is from Chris Gage again. Sorry, Chris, I borrowed from you, but you do really good work. Love requires self-love, and self-love is built in solitude. It's a great quote.
Yeah.
Very straight to the point.
Yeah.
Rips the Band-Aid right off there. So, but what do we think is the difference between solitude and loneliness?
Well,
Yeah.
in terms of how you feel in solitude, you're enjoying yourself. You're enjoying spending time with yourself. You're discovering new things about yourself. You're curious about
You've
yourself.
chosen it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to the point where if you have an option to be with people or to be with yourself, you can see the difference of like, wait a minute, the quality of me being with myself and with these people that are just going to be chatting, distracting, has nothing to do with where I want to be or what I want to do in my life. I'd rather just be alone.
Yeah. Would you know how to sit in solitude, Al?
Yeah. I've learned. But for
Not
me,
talking to someone on the phone,
no, but I was
not
gonna,
watching TV, not on your computer watching God knows what.
I can definitely do that, but I also see solitude another way,
Yeah.
and the two of you like definitely push back, please. But I
Yeah.
also see solitude or being alone.
Mhm.
Okay, I don't know if we want to equate the two, but being alone in the sense where I am not with someone, and I don't have a significant other,
Mhm.
but I still have social connections. So I have friends, I have family, not to mask everything else that's going on, but I'm doing the work. And as I'm getting better, I'm choosing to be alone, but I still want these social connections because of the enjoyment that that gives me for a different purpose. Whereas the loneliness is I need people as a distraction.
See, I see solitude like I picture Tibetan monk on
Monks.
top of a mountain, roaring fire, the wind blowing, and that's all they have. Like scrolls to read
Yeah.
and like, old books, and that's it. Just them themselves and the elements. That's how I picture it. But I mean, it's not going to happen to you in a big city by any means. Your family's not going to like it when you don't reach out for 2 months when, you're down the street.
But you can create it in the city.
Mhm.
That's when like the whole idea of like distraction is not there. Like if you decide to take a walk for 20 minutes with no distraction, just enjoying
No
life
one
or
being able to get a hold of you. Yeah, your phone's off. Yeah,
You
my
just
phone's off
Right?
right
These
now.
mine's
Yeah.
off too, right? So
Yeah.
it's that's the thing, is put it away. But like you say, being at one with nature.
Yeah.
You talked about
huge.
journaling,
Mhm.
right? There's times I'll just download again one of the self-help guru podcasts, a good 90 minutes worth. I'll go sit in a park somewhere, just enjoy the sunshine and just kind of listen to what they have to say
Oh,
and
nature's
appreciate
wonderful.
that.
Yeah.
Challenge that.
I know,
When you do
because
it,
you can say because I'm listening to the
yeah,
podcast though, I
when you do
know.
it without it, because the thing
Yeah.
is, when you do it without anything, it forces you to be present.
Yeah.
It forces you to hear whatever things that comes to your mind.
Yeah.
You
But
have to chase it away or
Yeah.
entertain it.
you forget though the solitude of being a kid, right? My favorite thing when I was a kid was to put on a Batman cape, get on my bike, and ride around the neighborhood. I probably wouldn't even see anyone, but just the freedom of being able to do that,
That's cool.
right? Or, forget like no one to play baseball with. You just go find a wall and you throw the ball against it, and you catch it, and you're teaching yourself something. But it's time by yourself, and sooner or later someone will come find you, like when we were kids. But think of the beauty of that, right? And kids don't get that as much anymore because we're picking them up and making them like go where but they're surrounded by people all the time
And their cell phone.
Yeah.
and their cell phone.
Hey,
Wow, not every kid. Some parents are smart enough not to give it to them, but yeah,
No, it's-
no, not mine. But I'm just
no,
saying,
but but even there, like you're talking about going throwing the ball. Even for me, it's like when I go to the gym and there's no one else there and there's just me.
Yeah.
And being able to one it with my thoughts, it's amazing. Whether it's the creative ideas that come to me, or the insights that I have, or the new perspectives.
But some people can't even enjoy taking a shower by themselves. They rush through it. It's like it should be like a very relaxing experience for you, and they just
Absolutely.
rush right through it, like because they're going to a billion other things. Like you're not taking that time to yourself.
Yep. Yep.
So
Yep.
that's an issue.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's a list here for solitude and the things that you should or shouldn't be doing with it. So it says solitude is taking the time to get to know yourself, which
Okay.
I think is understood. Sit in stillness. Don't be using your cell phone when you're on the toilet. Stillness, cleanliness, and find comfort in spending time in your own company. Yeah,
Yep.
so I think that's important. Do not avoid your feelings, repress them, or distract yourself from them. You actually have to feel your feelings, which is a very
Absolutely.
hard thing to do for most people.
Yeah.
It's pretty much what they've been avoiding their whole lives. Anyone? Anyone know that feeling?
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. There's like almost a shame to be feeling a certain way, especially after a breakup.
Yeah.
Like, why am I still sad about it?
Oh, and your
Like,
friends like can't understand you, and even you start to wonder, is like, why am I not getting through this? But it's a trauma, right? It takes a while to get through it, but the only way to get through it is on your own. No one's going to get you through it.
and I would say also to, at least when you do personal growth and stuff like that,
Yeah.
to see what was your fault. Like,
Yeah.
how did you contribute to the
Yeah.
Yep.
detriment of that relationship? And that's something that you have to face.
Well, we mentioned that, yeah, we mentioned that in the past ones. Like, obviously, I said alone, but you can use the help of a therapist, you can help the groups, but you do have to spend time alone and figure certain things out. No one's going to be able to figure out, and what we touched on was your pattern for
Yeah.
you. Only you're going to recognize what your pattern's been for 20 years. And once you recognize that, it's a huge step forward to say, okay, now I know where I've gone wrong. How do I fix
Fix it.
this? So that's a big part of it. So that was, don't avoid your feelings. It says be curious, pay attention to what you're feeling. Welcome the chance to learn about you, right? We get so caught up and it's so exciting to meet new people because it fills us with something we feel, but
Mhm.
we're empty. And then doing that doesn't actually make us feel greater. It's like it's not having that sense of purpose, right?
Well, and that's where finding, whether it's getting back in touch with yourself, whether it's rediscovering things you used to enjoy, or finding new habits, exploring, but it's now you're filling, right? You talked about filling the bucket,
Yeah.
right? You're filling the bucket, and it's amazing the impact that can have in terms of the self-growth, the positivity, and by doing things that allow you to reconnect with things you enjoy, it's amazing how it allows you to be the truer sense of you.
Yeah.
And that helps with the healing process. Again, nothing replaces time,
Yeah.
but
you need
it's
that time alone with yourself
absolutely,
too.
absolutely.
The funny thing here is, and I look at it because it reminds me of past experiences with therapists, right? It says when you're trying to, pay attention to your feelings, it goes through the list of anxious, distraught, comfortable, afraid, ashamed, confident. It reminds me of the wheel. And I remember being in therapy and she said, tell me what emotions you recognize on this wheel. And I'm like, I recognize anger and I recognize frustration. She's like, you recognize anything else? I'm like, nope, those two.
But if it's the same wheel I'm thinking of, and I can't think of the name off the top of my head, there's a second layer to it.
Oh yeah, it's
Right?
tiered.
Yeah. It's tiered, right? So it's okay. So you feel anger. Well, what's the underlying cause of that
And there's
anger,
so
right?
many other ones,
Exactly.
but the thing is like you can't name them, and that's
No.
part of it. It's like sometimes I sit with it, and then you go that way. I'm like, oh, that's actually what I'm feeling. There's an actual word for it, not this whole like over encompassing anger.
Anger, exactly. But we tend to either oversimplify,
Yeah.
overgeneralize, and oftentimes because either we don't know how to explain it, or because we're not aware of this deeper level. And that again goes back to really sitting with things and exploring it.
Yeah.
There's also like a positive aspect. Like we're talking about like the tough, like dealing with that when you're with yourself, you have to deal with all these emotion and anger and
That
sadness
you've
or
probably
whatever.
repressed for so long. Yeah.
But there's also, at least that's one of the things that I'm discovering is like you're discovering what makes you happy and your joy type of thing. Like there's a fun part of like, I remember at some point I was like, oh, I used to sing and dance just for no reason.
Exactly.
I don't need to be in a club. Like I can just turn up the volume in my house. Nobody cares, and start singing and dancing as I'm cleaning or whatever type thing. I'm like, that's
Yeah.
kind of fun.
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, for me, and it's kind of weird how this podcast even started, right? It started with an idea of like, I haven't done anything creative in a while, and that's the thing that's missing. So I want to start a podcast, and then, then going out and meeting people. I met Al, and a month later, he's like, we should start a podcast. I was laughing, right? And then we met Adam, our producer, and he's like, what are you guys doing? I'm like, we started a podcast. He's like, I produce podcasts. I'm like, but it's not only that, it's all the aspects of it, the writing aspects of it, the talking aspects of it, the psychology, everything I love is encompassed in this. So it just brings a sense of purpose and joy back that, I was missing. I still had a full life, kids and all that, but it's like you were missing that core concept of you, the things that you really enjoy.
There's a thing that I came up with and strongly believe in. Doesn't matter if you're religious or not. If you're the concept of like you're created by creator, whatever you believe in, or universe.
Yeah.
And if you're created in the image of the creator, your purpose is to create, no matter what that is. So
And not collect things, but to create things.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's the way I feel. Yeah.
Use your creative part. Everybody has some sort of creative power, whatever
Yeah.
it is. Singing, dancing, writing, cooking, I don't care what it is. But if you're not doing that out of pure joy, like you're your own little God in your own little world and you're meant to create and you're not doing that,
Yeah.
then you're not going to be happy. But when you're alone, you have an opportunity to discover what that is.
If you have
and
any
that
kind of
fulfills-
thing, any kind of talent, even if it's crosswords and you're
Yeah.
really good at them, like by all means.
But it's
Yeah.
amazing how many
The jumble.
people. Oh, I speak to all kinds of. Oh, I have no creative talent. I'm like, yeah, you do. And just as you said,
Yeah.
it could be cooking, it could be baking.
Yeah.
Creativity is so much more than just dancing or singing or painting.
You could be an electrician and you're creative.
Absolutely, right? But the other thing is, it goes back to what are you passionate about?
Mhm.
Passion is huge because when you're passionate, things don't feel like work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So you were talking about, as we go through the episodes and, even doing the research for it. Like,
Fun.
might people say, wow, it's like, I love because I'm discovering more information or,
And when you
it
start to get to
reaffirms
use it and when it's helping other people, it's great. Yeah.
Yeah, you get to talk about it and, and having these deep conversations, which I really, really, well, I know all three of us enjoy. I don't
Yeah.
want to speak for everyone, but
Yeah.
we do enjoy
Yeah.
this, knowing both of you.
Mhm.
And that's where you need those passion projects as well. You need that stuff that's what motivates, that's what drives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there's 5 steps to this whole process of seeking out solitude. So, 1, name your feelings. I remember actually reading a book on self-sabotage,
Okay.
and it wasn't just name your feelings; it's name that voice in your head,
Oh,
right?
like Inside Out.
Yeah, it's like but it wasn't multiple. It's just pick one.
Yeah.
So it's like asshole, right? And it's like you just have to name that whenever it's talking to you, you call it out. Say screw you, asshole, and then that's it. Yeah,
Are these the feelings you're experiencing towards yourself?
it's your voice in your own head.
Okay, I'm just
Yeah,
glad.
it's
I'm,
just
I'm,
for
I'm,
the-
I'm
it's
just
for the
I'm,
rumination.
I'm just glad that you're naming yourself this time and not me because I've already
The
done that
funny
in
thing
previous
is,
podcasts.
it's actually not me. It's like all these little things that people put in my head when I was a kid. So it's
Absolutely.
them, not
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
But you want to call me asshole?
No,
know? I think you called yourself one a
I-
couple times in a couple different
Yeah,
episodes.
I know.
Speaking of, on a little tangent,
Yeah.
not everybody hears their voice in their head. I actually learned that recently. There's some
Really?
people, like for example, when you read
Yeah.
a book, you hear
Yeah.
yourself, or even like you imagine the voice of somebody
Yeah,
telling you the story. Some people do not hear.
it's like a conscience, or
Nothing.
really? Whoa,
Yeah.
that'd be interesting.
Mhm.
An interesting way to live. That'd actually make a good movie.
Yeah.
There'd be no voiceover in that movie at all. No one to talk for them, but no, I'm just saying. But yeah, no, I didn't know that, but that's really interesting,
Yeah.
actually.
So then it just
Yeah.
gives you a concept
It's
of
a
like
very
not
different
everybody
way of
is-
living,
yeah.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay. We're gonna finish this one out because I think we'll move on to the next point. But so 5 steps here of solitude. Name your feelings. 1, observe them. Don't judge them. Key.
That's so
Right?
important.
Because it's what toxic shame. A lot of times, that voice in your head is you've been brought up to believe certain things that are negative about yourself, and you're just feeding into that. But you can't do that anymore.
Well, yeah, it becomes cyclical. It's no different than anyone who's familiar with something like, for example, like a body scan.
Yeah.
Okay, where you're dealing with physical feelings,
Mhm.
and it's great in terms of dealing with health issues. And what happens is, let's say you get like a tingling in the arm.
Yeah.
Okay, people, it's a bad feeling, it's a terrible sensation, rather than, okay, I'm noticing tingling. Okay, I'm
If your
noticing
body
that.
didn't do that, that'd be a really bad thing for you too, because then your
Right.
arm would just fall off naturally at some point. Because yeah.
Exactly. But it's sitting with it, it's observing it,
Yeah.
it's understanding it, it's recognizing it, but we're not naming
You're
it.
not
We're not-
freaking out
no,
about it
and-
immediately.
and we're not putting labels on it: good, bad, pleasurable, not pleasurable, so on and so forth.
Because it's there for a reason.
Yes.
Like it's your body telling you you need to pay attention to this,
Yeah.
Yeah.
essentially, and do something about it.
Yeah.
All right. Next one, be compassionate with yourself.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That's so
You
huge.
use nice words. We try to build up our friends and all that, but then have you ever heard the words you use to describe yourself in your head? And
All the time, absolutely.
idiot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Anytime
I think of Chris Farley all the time when I think of that
Yeah.
voice. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's horrible. So the next thing it says, this reminds me of a scene from Flashdance. Let the feelings come and wash over you like a crashing wave. So that's the visual I get in that. But yeah, it's like being like overcome with all the feelings at once, which I think would be a good thing though.
Yeah.
Right? It's
Yeah.
like because you've been suppressing those for so long, it would be a bad idea just to let it take you over for a bit and see where it takes you.
The way that I see it is you actually letting it leave your body. Because if you suppress it, you just accumulate it. And there's some science or pseudoscience, I don't know.
Oh,
But
it's got to be
basically,
toxins in that.
yeah,
Yeah.
Oh,
that's like that.
yeah.
It causes diseases somehow.
Yeah.
Even I don't know if it's true, but I remember reading somewhere that a lot of people that get bald spot, there's a lot of anger
Yeah.
that is stuck.
Well, no, but even when you said that, like getting rid of it, I just think of like, what is it? Like certain medicines, like what do they put the cream on your feet or something, and you see all the stuff come off on yeah, right? And it's like all the toxins come out of the bottom of your feet and like onto these pads, and you're like, that was in my body, and it just comes out of your feet.
Never heard of that, but it's
No?
quite the visual.
You should
Yeah,
try it.
yeah. This podcast is coming with like with a trigger warning.
It's better to get rid of that. And have, like look down like, oh, my feet are gangrene because yeah.
To give an example of how I experienced it, like before I went through my divorce, I was going through like groups. I guess it's not really therapy, but it's like the group of friends that I made. It's like a mastermind, and we would like talk on a regular basis, talk about everything about our life. And then there was a weekend where I went to see my sister in Montreal, and she's a runner.
Yeah.
And she was like, you know what? Come and run with me. I'm like, whatever. She's like, yeah, just come run in a couple of minutes. I started running. I think 2 or 3 minutes, probably 2 minutes into the run, I stopped and I could not stop crying.
Yeah.
I could not understand why.
Just hate you right then and
Yeah.
there.
So I spoke to one of my friends from the group because he's kind of like a healer-ish type of person. And he's like, well, you've been doing all that work mentally in order to understand like your situation with your relationship and stuff like that, but you haven't physically moved it out. So that was just all a release. I'm like, oh,
is that somatic?
Could be
Somatic processing.
Yeah. There's one last point, and I'm going to direct this at an Al, and it simply says seek professional help.
I get told that all the time.
So
no, but
yeah, therapy is usually helpful, but there's different types of therapy. We were just saying somatic processing is one thing, right? That people can try
there's different modalities, but the reality is, I'm a big believer everyone can use talking to a professional at some point in time, because I say everyone deals with physical ailments. You're going to tell me not everyone deals with emotional and mental well-being ailments? Come on.
I said there's bruises in your brain from certain things you've experienced, right? There's probably glitches in your brain of like the memories that you've suppressed too and all those kind of things. So it's like,
I don't know about the two of you, but there's times where something's really weighing on me and I almost feel that, like that pressure in my head. And it's like when I sit there and I'm doing a meditation, you talk about leaving up, and I'm actually focusing on
the stress headache.
Yeah, it's not even a headache, but it's more just, it feels heavy. It's like this heaviness where it's okay, let's just kind of let this go, get this out. So absolutely. Yeah.
I just wanted to thank Jessica Schrader for that was her article, psychologytoday.com, and Unpacking Anxiety. What does it mean to sit with your feelings? We are now going to go on to a little part on self-medicating with attention and validation from others. Anyone do that at any point in their lives?
Validation from others?
Seeking it?
No.
Really? You've just been a joy on the inside from the very beginning.
Was I not believable when I said that? Yeah. Anyone who says no is full of shit.
Okay. Well, this might apply to at least me. I'm not going to speak for Al, but unstable men feed their ego with the attention of a multitude of girls.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And I'd say we've probably both done that. I said women do that too. If you look at the apps, that's really what's happening to everyone.
That's what's happening to everyone these days. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, but how does this relate to our own experience? I mean, that's just one way to self-medicate.
Yeah.
We were talking about other ways that we liked, but there are versions of self-medicating. Like they're listing off, drugs, sex, parties, not the same thing, separate words.
But they could be the same thing.
Could be.
We'll probably find out all three together, actually.
No, look, there are places for that, love addicts and sex addicts. That is certainly a thing. Not the same thing, but they're both things. Called it the boob tube. I did that by mistake. I totally did not mean to write that right afterwards, but yes, on Netflix. But we all use it at certain points. You'll find certain shows like I hate saying this too, but because especially what I just said, drug, sex, party. I like a lot of Viking shows.
Okay.
So, And I did. Like I was on Netflix before the strike. I was watching the same like type of show because it was a certain point of history. Would have gone better with our whole chivalry topic. But like I liked history shows. So it was good for me to have like one show to go to another. It was the greatest distraction for me because it's almost like watching history.
Yeah.
Um, but I couldn't watch any fiction, like any kind of like comedy or anything like that. It all had to be like history. So that worked for me. But there's times I can never even watch TV. It all has to
Yeah.
be like podcasts or talking to people. Controlling your environment is a big one for people. Some people never get over this. They always think they're going to be able to control themselves. They control their environment. We all know that it's never going to work
No.
ever.
No.
And this is all to do what? To avoid
Loneliness.
loneliness and feeling your feelings. So that's a big part of it. Does being alone equate with loneliness?
We kind of talked about that,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. I think
You
we
think?
covered
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think it's the same, but yeah.
No, I don't think it's the same.
No,
either.
I don't either.
No,
No.
no. But solitude is one thing because it's a choice. Loneliness is something else because it might often be pushed onto you. You broke up with someone. You were forced out. It's a different feeling altogether.
It's a state of mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because on the outside it looks the same, but on the inside it looks different.
And there are people who may choose to be alone
Mhm.
because they feel that whatever they need, their needs are being met by other people with different things as well,
Okay.
right?
Yep, I agree with that. What's the longest period of time by choice you've ever chosen to be alone to work on your growth?
The 2 hours, from setting up for this show and
Did you have like a stomach ache? You were stuck in the
yeah,
washroom? Is that
exactly.
why?
Um, I can't narrow down a specific time, but it's as I've gotten older, there's been more extended periods where
Yeah.
I've come to recognize the benefits, right? When I was younger, definitely not. But the last few years, I've definitely seen some of the benefits with that. So, yeah.
MJ?
I don't know how to categorize. I would say years, really.
Mm.
Because obviously there's going to be periods where I meet people, but like the last 7 years of my life basically has been like pretty much focusing on growth, personal growth by choice. Because I could choose to like not be alone, but I don't want to be with somebody that's in a bad quality way. So years, I guess.
Sort of the curveball, like no one's ever alone, depending on your faith. But um, for me, I don't think I've ever, probably this is the first year I've really taken the opportunity to do it, right? 6 months. I will say though, and this is the most impressive thing that I ever watched, and it kind of inspired me too, is I do have a family member um, who once was out of a relationship, decided to take, I think it was 4 years,
Wow.
to put a lot of effort into reading a lot of books. Had no problem going to a restaurant, eating by himself, reading a book, which was hilarious too, because I always get calls from like women, he's single, can I go out with him? Like, no. But yeah, but someone to take that time and then to watch the changes in someone over the years, right? And not just mentally, but physically in the person
Yeah.
and their whole attitude. Like to watch someone actually do that, it is almost like watching, a monk change from like someone who walks in there. I think of it as like Stripes, the movie. They all walk in with long hair. They all look like hippies. They shave their heads, and now they're in the army. It's like that too. That was like me on our first show when I cut my hair.
And that's why you see me shaking my head because it's
Yeah,
just
like
not happening. I'm
I'll
like,
never
what?
do it.
Yeah.
No, that's too extreme for Al. But no, it's like it's the same thing. It's like you just see someone start that journey, as you said, right? That hero's journey, where they start out and they, start out one way, and then slowly over time you start to see the incremental changes, and they're a totally different person, mind and body when they come through it. And if more people were willing to do that, it'd be amazing. Um, but it's so hard, right? Because again, we go back to what is it? It's fear. Um, so ways of achieving again, grounding yourself, if that's what you want to call it. Mindfulness, we talked about it. We touched on nature walks, creative expression. We've hit everything like before we even hit these notes, right? Journaling, great one. Digital detox.
Yeah.
Yes.
So those are all the ways that they're suggesting to get out of your loneliness. Now, is it an easy thing to do?
So here's my question though.
Okay.
Anything worthwhile,
Mm-hmm.
does it come easy?
No. Nothing worthwhile ever comes easy. Nothing in life ever comes easy.
And so if you look at that, yeah, it's not an easy process, but the long term, the benefits, the gains, I think that's what you have to take away from this.
It's the anxiety of having to look at yourself. You've never had to do it.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who you are, but it's really it's like anything else in life. It's fear. And if you can overcome that fear, which as you said, is all in your head, it's a mental thing that I think if you can overcome, but it's like this is like a roadmap, right? Like we found it.
Yeah.
Other people can find it too. But it's interesting that I've never found a good video online to teach you how to sit in your loneliness,
No.
because I don't think anyone can teach you how to sit in your loneliness.
No,
Right? It's an individual thing.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very personal.
Al, you want to sing us out?
Yeah, I've got nothing coming off the top of my head, and I don't think, you know what, we're
I
trying to
thought- I
we're
thought,
trying to boost ratings, not lose viewers.
We were talking about getting over our fears, but no. Okay.
Yeah, I'll come up with, I'll do a song one day. Okay. Be it good or bad, I'll do a song one day.
I'll be coming round the mountain when he comes.
Woot woot.
There you go.
There you
Smoothie on the
go.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. This is a great show. Thank you, MJ, for being here.
Thank you for having me.
All
You
right.
are
I'm Adam.
MJ once again.
Thank you. I'm MJ.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Al, and show MJ some love. Make sure you listen to the podcast wherever you get it. Follow this episode, like it, rate it, review it. 5 stars only, please. But show MJ the love and share this. This is a great topic.
And wherever you're lonely, feel free to write a comment on one of our posts.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Until next time, take care.
Bye.